Well, while the rest of media is wrapped up in talking about the January 6th insurrection, and the Democrats try to somehow build that as a way to maybe stem the tide of the onslaught against them during these midterm elections, and the average American doesn't really care, and the only one really obsessing about it, other than Liz Cheney, is the deranged lunatics that work at PMSNBC, I'm going to take a look at the last gasping breath of relevancy to Dr. Fauci Stein.
Multiple sources of now preliminary data indicate a decreased severity with Omicron. But the big caveat is we should not be complacent, since the increased transmissibility of Omicron might be overridden by the sheer volume of the number of cases that may be of reduced severity, but could still stress our hospital system.
With all due respect, sir, you're beginning to bore the hell out of me.
So as Omicron cases soar, there's Dr. Fauci saying, now we can't let up. Even though people are getting COVID who have been double vaccinated and had the booster, the stats are overwhelming. They will not get seriously sick. In fact, I can show you graphs and data that support that. And as I asked yesterday, who paid for those graphs? Who paid for that data? You are smart enough to understand. I know those of you that watch me and listen to me on the radio, you get it. You can make a stat say anything you want it to. You can create a survey that will always come out the way you want it to. You can manipulate, you can create, and so when they tell us that they got the staffs to prove it, again, we're going to walk through this, hopefully for the last time, but probably not. Viruses always mutate. When they mutate, when they change, each time they change, even if they change rapidly and spread rapidly, that's actually a good thing, because what it means is each time the virus goes through a metamorphosis, it weakens itself. We're told so much that the fact checkers don't like that we don't provide context for what we say, yet the truth is, nobody provides context to what Dr. Fauci says, except people like me and others in conservative media, and there are some on the left that are doing it, like Jimmy Dore, Sager, and Jetty over at Breaking Points. Dr. Fauci loves to talk about the cases are rising and there could be a run on the hospitals and we could overwhelm the hospitals, which is exactly what he said 2 years ago. Remember that? Remember, there wasn't going to be a hospital bed available in New York City, and they had pictures of people in hallways, and it turned out to be pictures from Italy. We were told that they were stockpiling dead bodies in frozen tractor-trailer trucks, but yet we never actually got to see any of those pictures. So one wonders, did that really happen? Fauci's already admitted over the weekend they overcounted when it came to hospitalizations as relating to the coronavirus. Was this somebody that's actually in the hospital because of coronavirus, or are they there for something else, and when they got tested, they came up positive even if they are asymptomatic? So now that they're acknowledging this, and I've said the rollback is beginning, Fauci still wants that gasp of relevancy. He's been given the directive, it is time to roll this back. It is time to prepare Americans. It's here to stay, and we're going to let you get back to your lives, get back to doing what you need to do. There is this part of him that he has gotten so addicted, like a crack addict. He has gotten so addicted to the media attention and to being this guy that everybody looks to and goes to and wants to hear from. the narcissist in him, the egomaniac in him, cannot let that go. He just can't. And so once again, he comes out and he muddies the waters. And he talks about, again, overwhelming the hospitals. Doc, we've been there, done that, and it didn't happen. And you do remember that there were mobile hospitals set up in New York City, one by the Army, one by Samaritan's Purse. President Trump had a military surgical hospital ship docked in New York Harbor, and none of it was needed or used. Of course, Cuomo was too busy sending infected people into nursing homes to kill the elderly, because the people who should have been protected, the extreme elderly, well, The only reason there would be a run on hospitals right now is because the media keeps whipping this up with no context, talking about rising cases. It now makes up 95%, Omicron makes up 95% of all new coronavirus outbreak. And it has cold-like symptoms. It's the cold, renamed. The only reason there would be a run on the hospitals is because of the fear that has been instilled in people, who under normal circumstances would get these same symptoms and go, I got a cold, take some NyQuil, go to bed, maybe lay out of work a day or two till I'm feeling better and get back to life. But because you have created the fear, you have instilled the hysteria, that's the only thing that would drive that, because here's the context that is not given. And again, fact checkers, check it out. We have how many thousands of cases of Omicron since November in this country? And do you know how many deaths we have? On January the 6th, 2022, 0. The one that supposedly died of it in Texas, it turned out to be fake news. Didn't happen. It was a lie, a canard, a prevarication, a lie. On Friday, the Supreme Court is going to listen to 4 combined cases that deal with President Biden's vaccine mandate on private businesses. In fact, as the headline reads, the Supreme Court to hold a hearing on Biden's vaccine and testing mandate. Now, of course, the media is trying to set the stage that Supreme Court, that they've been siding with the states that enact these kind of mandates. They'll certainly side with Biden. We'll see. In reality, this is an incredible breach of the Constitution, a way overreach of Joe Biden. What I think could happen is the Supreme Court could kind of take a wimp position and say, the federal mandate is not constitutional, but if the states want to mandate this, that's up to them. What really needs to happen is the whole thing needs to be declared unconstitutional, and whether on the federal level or the state level, you cannot proceed with this. If we do not have the right over our own body, I mean, this is make or break, and I am encouraging you, if you are a Christian, if you are a believer, pray for this hearing on Friday. Pray, because if they side with Biden, or they leave the door open for states to do this, then that is the end of all of your rights. Because if you don't have the most basic civil right over your own body, and again, for disclaimer purposes, we are not saying don't take the vaccine. What we're saying is don't mandate the vaccine. If you want to take it and you feel it's perfectly safe to do, and that's what you want to do, and that's what you choose to do, you have the right to do that. Don't mandate someone else do that, and then don't ostracize them from life if they don't. In Austria, they took 2 million unvaccinated people and mass quarantine and locked them down other than going to work. So imagine, you're a waiter in a restaurant. That's your job. You were allowed to go to work, put your mask on, serve people their meals, but as soon as you clocked out, you were to go straight home. You couldn't even sit down in the restaurant that paid you and allowed you to work. You couldn't sit down and actually eat a meal once you were off the clock. And now in Austria, beginning in February, there is no more choice. They are going to do forced vaccination. And I promise you, even though our media is not talking about this, and a lot of other countries like England, they're not talking about it, the leaders are all watching. And they want to see what kind of blowback, pushback, what kind of problems. And if the people basically just sort of grunt and gripe and complain, and maybe a few thousand gather in the streets and the police are able to contain it and keep it under control, and that's that, it could be coming to a country near you. You know, I've told you before that I am apart with the average conservative when it comes to healthcare. I would like to see affordable health care for everybody. And governments that can fund wars can fund health care. And we now see what's happening in our country when Big Pharma takes over the FDA and takes over the media by all of the advertising that they can spend. We see how they can dictate and manipulate policy. Same is true. We don't talk about if you're not watching a pharmaceutical commercial during a news break or any television break, it's insurance. I mean, the insurance companies rival Big Pharma when it comes to buying TV time. Now, a lot of it, it's car insurance. But if you think that the insurance lobbyists aren't working hard to keep things the way they are. And again, I have said we need mass affordable health care for all. But to my progressive friends that really keep pushing healthcare through the government, name me one thing the government does well. And I'm talking specifically to you, Jimmy Dore, because I know this is really important to you. And I know you're really big on this, and you keep slamming Fauci that this really isn't about our health with all these mandates. It was really about health. You would be out there advocating health care for all. What if we had health care for all right now run by the government? You know, the same government that's following the guidelines of CDC and Dr. Fauci and Big Pharma. Is there the possibility they would cut you off from your health care if you had refused vaccination? Cut you off from public assistance if you refuse vaccination? See, if the Supreme Court allows this to stand on Friday, the end game for them changes. The end game for the Democrats, for the oligarch, it changes. And they might go ahead and put a little pause to the rollback, because once they can mandate and enforce the mandate, it's not going to stop. And anytime there's any type of health issue, there'll be a new set of directives and a new set of mandates, and eventually that passport on your phone will be a passport in you, and it will all be digital, and they will track, trace, period. And all of you that are buying into, wouldn't it be great if we like had mass transportation around the country and didn't everybody have to have a vehicle? Yes, because wouldn't it be wonderful if they could actually tell you where you could and couldn't go and when you can get, do you see where all this could go? And I know when we talk about it, we're conspiracy loons. And then 6 months to a year later, it turns out to happen. But I want to take a moment and I want to address something that for some of you, you might not understand why I'm dealing with this, but I need to. You wimp pastors. I'm talking to one of you in particular in North Carolina right now. You wimp. Why don't you just quit and go get an honest job? When I see churches that are under no mandate to close, that are now using a phrase that absolutely drives me out of my mind, out of an abundance of caution, out of an abundance of caution, why don't you just admit what it really is? Out of an abundance of a lack of faith, out of an abundance of a disregard for your obligation in Hebrews 10:25, forsake not the assembling of yourselves together. Some of you guys that claim to be Reformation theology and you uphold the reformers, boy, it's a good thing for you that a guy like John Calvin didn't decide one day, gee, we're making the established religion and Roman Catholicism upset with our Protestant teachings. Maybe out of an abundance of caution, we should just back off. I have said this in the very beginning, and I'm going to say it again. Never in the history of the world, when the world was in turmoil, whether through a plague, an outbreak, a crisis, a natural disaster, war, famine, disease, pestilence, never were the church doors closed. That's when they should be open the widest, offering people help, hope, and faith. Shame on you, pastors. You're in a town where you're closed, but your Walmart's open, the liquor store's open, the gentleman's club is probably open, the hardware store is open, the vape shop is open, and you're closed? Do God a favor. Don't reopen. You're worthless. Absolutely, positively worthless. You don't have a calling. You're a hireling. You weren't called by God into the ministry. You did it because you thought it was an easy gig. You like to talk. You like to talk a little bit about the Bible. Hey, it's virtually no work. And now really it is virtually no work because you're doing it virtually. You're pre-recording your sermon, and when you ought to actually be standing in a pulpit delivering it and ministering to people, you're either still in bed watching pre-game football or you're off at a restaurant, but it's too dangerous for your people to congregate in the building. So out of an abundance of caution, you're off at the Bass Pro Shop on Sunday morning. You fraud. I ranted about this on my personal Facebook page, and one of my members said, are we going to have to close? No. What are you kidding? We stayed open when we were told to close. We stayed open. If I have to preach outside on the roof, we're open. I've said this story before, and I think it bears repeating, and it's a great way to close this out. Several years ago, when my show first really began to take off on radio, I was doing some public speaking for different groups, usually different Tea Party groups around the Central Florida area. And one night I got done with one of the talks, and it had been advertised and promoted. And a guy in the back came up and introduced himself to me and told me that he represented a small group, but a group that really spent a lot of time investigating and tracking down and were building an online blog and archive of what they call religious persecution in our country. And he told me the name of his group, Atheists for Religious Freedom. Well, obviously, kind of piqued my curiosity. I was like, Atheists for Religious Liberty. I said, why on earth do you as an atheist care if I have religious liberty? And I will never forget his answer. He looked at me and he said, Pastor, I may not believe what you believe, but I know that people like you and millions more do believe. And if the government can stop you, can stop the church, then in their mind, they have stopped God. And a government that thinks they can stop God, they're certainly not going to worry about stopping a peon like me. Wow. And some of you dillweed pastors are playing right into this. Out of an abundance of caution. Look, if you want to give your congregation a warning saying, hey, we have a couple families in the church they've got it. They're going to stay home for a week or so and get over it. If that makes you uncomfortable, we understand, but we're open. And everything we do is running on time and normal. And if you can't do that, if you haven't got enough faith to do that, if you haven't got enough, and especially after everything that we know now, I can kind of give some of you guys a little cover when this all was first being ramped up in March of 2020. We're in January of 2022. And we've got half the country freaking out over a cold. Stuffy head, scratchy throat, runny nose. I better go get tested. Even the left is beginning to figure this out. And you're shutting down over an abundance of caution. You do understand the reason now that this thing is really spreading. Everybody is going to get it. You cannot hide from it. That's science. That's not just a rant. That's actual science. The director of WHO has said this virus is not going away. Barring a miracle from God, it's here to stay. Like the flu, like pneumonia. The good news, and why you ought to be having your church doors open and heralding this from the pulpit to combat all the negativity that your people absorb all week from the news, to get up in the pulpit and say, praise the Lord. This virus has now mutated so quickly and it is spreading so rapidly, 0 deaths. 0 deaths. Can we go back to life now? Can we go back to the movie theater and the McDonald's and not have to prove our status? New York City lets illegals live there, work there, vote there. Even let them drive there. But if you were to ask people of color in New York to show ID to vote, we're told that's racist. But you've got to show ID and proof of vaccination to walk into a McDonald's on 5th Avenue and order a Big Mac. How warped, whacked is all of this nonsense? Show me your papers. And by the way, pastors, you're going to take this big stand for God. I've heard some of you guys that are into this abundance of caution, you shut down. I've heard some of your other sermons through the years, though, talking about taking a stand for Jesus, that, you know, we gotta do the right thing, the moral thing, and we gotta stand against oppression and tyranny and blah, 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 blah. Talk. You're the hero of all of your stories and all of your sermons. What are you going to do if the Supreme Court lets this Biden mandate stand? What are you going to do when Biden and his henchmen get around to saying for churches to stay open, the people who congregate must prove their vaccination status? Bum, ba-dum, bum. You've already proven you don't have a backbone. You've already proven you don't have any real biblical character on this issue. So we know what you'll do. I could tell you what I won't do. All right, that's it for this little rant.